Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I want to welcome Leland Jones back to the channel as well. So today
Shalom.
we're going to discuss a few things regarding Armageddon and current events and how they relate to Bible prophecy and where we might be at in the timeline. But Leland, as we were talking before we just went on the air here, it's been kind of frustrating, hasn't it, with all of these wars, rumors of wars going on, and trying to figure all of this out.
Well, yeah, I think what we want to do, guys, is Johnny's going to ask me a question. I'm going to ask Johnny a question. We kind of got our areas, and we were just talking a little bit just to fill you in on, just Ukraine. Ukraine was like, oh, it's going away. Russia's advancing. Ukraine, okay, we're close to negotiations. It's going to finally be finished. But it's not. It keeps going and going. And so for some of us, we're desensitized. Oh my goodness, it's too either nuke or ceasefire, but it's just painful. It's just going and going. It's never ending. So some of us, myself included, we're desensitized. I think, and that's what I wanted to ask you the questions. For me personally, I'm kind of desensitized to all the rhetoric and and I really thought that, oh my goodness, this cursed invasion, I thought this was a big deal. I still do. But I really felt like the Russian response was going to be tremendous.
Right.
And not, I mean, oh yeah, they did their biggest launch, but it hasn't been. And so I really have a question for you about where are we at? The people, and if we just take it simple, if we take a bird's eye view, where are we at with Russia's invasion of Ukraine?
Well, there's two aspects to it now because of the Kursk invasion that you just mentioned. But we have the main invasion force, which is along the Donetsk region, along that Donetsk River, that whole eastern portion of Ukraine. That technically is still Russian because it's all Russian-speaking people there. It's a lot of retired people from the Soviet Union days and pensioners that live there, but Ukraine wants it for themselves. And part of this has to do with, all the mineral resources that are in that particular area. There's billions of dollars of, rare earth minerals in that particular region. And that's why they're, fighting over it. It's always about money, right? It always seems to get down to that. The root of all evil is the love of money. So, we have that aspect of it too. So we have that side of the war, which now it's collapsing for Ukraine on that particular front. Everything is collapsing, and the NATO and Ukrainian forces are having to fall back and bolster themselves at different locations and try and prevent, a full run on into Kiev itself, which could happen at any moment. But as a distraction or as a maneuver, this is an old World War II maneuver from what my research is starting to show me. NATO decided to go into the Kursk region. And the main reason for that is to take over some Russian territory so that when they do end up at the negotiating table, NATO's feeling is, well, then they can trade this for that, right? They can trade Russian territory for what Ukraine considers their territory on the original front in this operation, in this war. And so that's part of the goal. And then the other part of the goal is to terrorize the Russians. If they can take over that Kursk flower plant and blow it up, I mean, talk about a massive
Right.
terror operation. That's another
That's what.
possibility. And they've already attacked the plant with drones, that Russia had to repel with their air defenses. So that's another reason to keep constant pressure on the Russian government by putting pressure on their people and forcing them to evacuate. And then, makes Putin look bad. And then maybe they can get some kind of a, unrest generated inside of Russia itself. But it's not really doing that. It's having the opposite effect. They're actually rallying around Putin even more now, from what I can gather.
Okay, so don't you feel like they're trying to provoke Russia on purpose to
Yes.
bring in more NATO? So like Russia has to respond. They're crossing red lines, and then they're forcing Russia's hand, which will become more aggressive, which will force NATO's hand to, oh, we have to get involved.
Yes, I see an escalation coming, and that's what they've been pushing for this entire time. They keep continuing crossing red lines, and that's what makes me think that in the back of my mind, this is all just a script, and that is playing out according to a script that they've written out a long time ago. and that they'll pull the nuclear trigger when they decide when the part of the script comes up, and not before. But ultimately we know that God Almighty is in control, and so He's ultimately pulling the strings on all of this and letting it unfold as it's supposed to. That's really that where I put my hope and my anchor to stop me from getting so frustrated by these things. Because if you don't have Jesus Christ as your anchor, you're going to get tossed to and fro like the waves.
Right, right. And so, guys, nukes are in the prophecy. Okay, nukes is in the
Mhm.
prophecy. Just to let you know, it's talking about nukes in Zechariah 14. It says their eyes will melt in their sockets. I mean, this is a nuclear detonation. Um, that is basically those that surround Jerusalem. It says it specifically there, okay? But then there's other nukes because we talked about before, there's a global Armageddon that's over on the Ukraine front. And then we have the local Armageddon, and that local Armageddon is in Israel. So the nations that come around Israel, they're going to be nuked somehow, somehow.
Right.
Okay, so it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Okay, so yeah, I mean, if you look at a map and we look at what Kursk is compared to Donetsk and Zaporizhia as it goes, I mean, Russia's advance, it's been slow. Here we are, 2 years and three-quarter years. But they're progressing, and like you said, they're breaking down the front. And Kursk is just a small thing. So it's, oh, okay, Kursk, we need to take this Kursk so we can bring Russia to the negotiation table. Well, why? If you take 5 cents and someone takes $500, how are you negotiating? It's
Right.
it's not. It's got to be a provocation, guys. We talked about a few weeks ago how when we came to the host trot, we came to our point of watching Armageddon escalate. It was peace and security, but then it said sudden destruction. That's what Ukraine is saying. Oh, we're gonna negotiate. Okay, we're gonna have peace through war. I mean, this is what politicians are saying. Oh, we're gonna have peace when we increase our nuclear deterrence. Oh, okay. Well, isn't that great? Well, guys, this is a parallel. So we're seeing the advance in Kursk taking place at the same time we're seeing things increase in Israel.
Right.
So I just want to, when we met last time we did the interview, we were ahead of what we were watching for the host Trotten. And then if you guys seen the video, it was, this is the peace and security and then sudden destruction. And
Yeah.
now that's, and that was Cursed. It wasn't, they didn't negotiate, but Cursed was like this. We're sold as Cursed, like, oh, well, this is going to bring Russia to the negotiating table. No, it's not. It is sudden destruction. So whatever that sudden destruction is, it is continuing, guys. There's no peace. There's no ceasefire. The war is just going. It's just going to keep going. But what I don't think that people realize is the extent of the Israeli society collapsing. Okay, this is
Right.
a big deal. There's a lot of things happening that we're not privy to. Okay, we would have to be reading and getting information in Arabic and getting information in Hebrew and reading, through the thick veil of propaganda coming from that state with a star on it. So if you guys had seen on Johnny his feed, there's a guy Mahmoud, and that's how I found out about him. And I've listened to some of his updates. I don't listen to all of them, but when he has a short video, when he covers a certain subject, I find it very beneficial, guys. He's explaining how Israeli society is collapsing. It is collapsing, guys. When the 6 hostages died, they were alive a few days ahead of time. Okay,
Mhm.
they died, and you got to realize, guys, it's hard to explain, but the way the Israelis feel is they do not care about other people, other ethnicities. They do not care about Palestinians. They can just wipe out Palestinians by the thousands. It doesn't faze them. But if one Israeli dies, if you see that one Israeli family crying and the mother and the grandma, guys, the whole society will collapse. So when the 6 hostages. They were, they were killed, and they take their dead bodies. I was like, oh, this is this is not really what we're looking for. But it was a huge collapse of society. It brought up 500,000 people in Tel Aviv. It shut down the airport. It shut down trade unions, and it just collapsed. And then we get more resignations from the military, high-end people, and that means that the military is collapsing. Okay, the military is collapsing under the weight of this war. All the wars in the state of Israel, they were quick wars, a few days, a few weeks, maybe a couple months at the most. Never like this, never a war of attrition, never something like this. And they can't handle it. They don't have the people, they don't have the resources, they don't have the mentality to maintain it. They want the Air Force to go in and strike bombs and okay, we win, whatever. No, it's not happening, guys. Hamas is showing themselves strong. And so what happened, guys, is we said peace and security, and it's going to be sudden destruction. The sudden destruction came the next week. It was Hamas. Our information was propaganda from Israel. We didn't find out everything. We're not going to, but what we can do is read between the lines, and Hamas did have successful strikes. They may have taken out the 8200 leader. Okay, the 8200 leader is kind of like an NSA in Israel. I mean, they got tentacles all over the world, and Hamas said that they were targeting this guy. He had released his name to the public. They knew who he was. They tried to target him, right? Then we're getting reports that he is going to resign. We're getting reports he's going to resign. Oh, isn't that convenient? Well, what if he's dead? If we don't see him, well, then Hamas, they took out an official.
Right.
They took out an Israeli official, just like Israel took out the official major commander of Hezbollah. If I said Hamas, guys, I'm sorry. I meant when I'm talking about Hezbollah, I'm talking about southern Lebanon. And so it was Hezbollah's response that was sudden destruction, and it was effective. And this is supposed to be, Israel's got the Iron Dome, and it's you can't do anything. Yes, they can. They don't have an Air Force, okay? They do have advanced weapons. So Hezbollah is showing itself strong. Israel is struggling in Hamas, and we have all these things. The Philadelphia Accord of Rafah, this and that. We said it, guys, when they say peace and safety, sudden destruction. There's no peace and safety.
Well, I was going to ask you about about Iran too in regards to all this. Is this this is what I'm speculating in my mind anyway, that they're holding off on their big response to Israel because they don't have to respond right now. Israel's getting their butts handed to them internally, as you just said, through the hostage discovery, all the dead hostages. And then, of course, Hezbollah is taking care of the north part of Israel.
Absolutely. Why waste the opportunity of placing all this stress and anxiety and we're going to attack, we're going to attack, we're going to attack by doing it soon?
Right.
Why do it soon? Take your time. That is contributing to society collapsing. We got airplanes being canceled. Airlines were not going to Israel until October. I mean, Israelis are trying to flee Israel, guys, and they can't even take flights. They're crying, we can't take a flight. We can't get out of here. But yeah, I mean, that is an opportunity, and that is part of the collapse. That's part of the collapse. They have generators for the hospital. They've been in concrete things around the generators to protect them from. They are panicking. All of society is like panicking. People are leaving. So yeah, I still think they're going to do it, Johnny. But yes, it is part of the collapse of society is the anxiety, and the people are so stressed and beside themselves with this waiting that they're like, we'll do a preemptive strike, so they're calling preemptive strike. So yes, I still think it's coming. But because they have to, they can't look like this in front of the Muslims.
So
They
in
can't look
your,
like this in front of their society. They can't, okay, sure, they can delay it, but they have to do something.
right, I would think so, because of the, it's kind of an honor thing, isn't it, with them that, you're a guest in our country, and then, Israel took out that guy, the Hamas leader in Iran. And so that's kind of a big slap in the face in that culture, is it not?
Absolutely. So they have to do something. They're
Yeah.
gonna have to do something. But a couple things someone sent me today. This is not from my research. I thought it was fascinating.
Okay.
In the book of Esther, um, what it says is that there was a death decree by Haman to kill all the Jews throughout the Persian Empire, right? Many of the Jews were in the capital city called Shushan, the palace. And so Esther intercedes, approaches the king, cancel this decree. You're scheduled to execute my people. The king didn't know she was Jewish. Okay. So the king reverses the decree. And then Esther approaches the king and says, well, um, okay, you canceled it, but you have to notify the whole kingdom because the people don't know. And so you have to go and we have to cancel it throughout. But then the king authorizes the Jews to execute their enemies. So the Jews go about throughout the whole kingdom and they execute their enemies. And what the person said is, this was their insight, not mine, is that the numbers of the Jews executing their enemies is very similar to what's happening with Hamas, Hezbollah, and the West Bank. So what they saw is they saw a connection that, and this is we're gonna backtrack just a little bit, guys, and I'm gonna talk about West Bank, really important.
Yes.
But just a little while ago, the tally of Israel bombing and doing raids into the West Bank was around 500. Israel's bombings into southern Lebanon was 300. And we know that the Ministry of Health in Hamas, they're telling us that 40,000 um, Palestinians are dead from Israel's war in Gaza.
Right.
Yeah, but they're not going through the rubble. When you had the earthquakes in Turkey, they had the machines and the excavators, and they're digging through the rubble to find the people.
Right.
Well, they're not doing that. They're not. There's so many buildings. There's so many. So the tally is going to be higher. But what we're getting at, guys, is we go back to the book of Esther. So the Jews that killed their enemies throughout the kingdom it says in the book of Esther, 75,000. And I was like, you know what? I bet that's how many actual Palestinians died in the Gaza Strip. Okay. And that we have 500 people that died in West Bank, and then we have 300 people in southern Lebanon. So what happened is, in Shushan the palace, the Jews killed in that area. On one day they killed 500, the next day they killed 300, and we're actually seeing something similar at our present time.
Wow.
And think about it. The enemies that is called the axis of resistance, which is called the Al-Quds force or the Jerusalem army, which is what? Persia. And Persia is Iran. So it really is Iran that's, the big enemies against the Jewish state. They're the ones going. And we're actually at a point that's very similar to this point in the book of Esther at the end.
Wow.
So that was not my insight. It was someone else that sent it to me, and I thought it was insightful, and I wanted to share with you guys. But the other thing that followed, I think it was last week, is Israel's incursion into the West Bank is a huge deal, guys. Their public officials are saying we're going to do to the West Bank the same thing as the Gaza Strip.
That's what I heard too. Yep. They're just going to raise it to the ground.
Huge, huge deal, guys. If that's the case, they're going into places, they're cutting off the water and the sewage and electricity. And I don't know about cell phones, but They're cutting off these cities. They're going in and they're doing the same thing. You gotta leave. Okay, you gotta leave. We're going in. Okay, the people leave, and then they go to wherever they left to, and they're going to attack there. It's the same thing as the Gaza Strip. So this is a huge escalation, and it's part of what we knew about a year ago. A year ago, Netanyahu, he went into the United Nations. He said, "This is the new Middle East." He put up the map, and there was no Gaza Strip. There's no West Bank. The map went into southern Lebanon. So everything we've seen in that, it's all happened. You know, it's all happened.
And they just had a similar map up at the State Department briefing in the U.S. here not long ago, and the press called them out on it. And they're like, why do you have this map up here and you don't have anything with Palestinians? You don't have the West Bank, nothing. He's like, well, I'm not going to argue with you about Netanyahu's map and the one that they're using, but he didn't explain why they were using it, right? So
well, he's got to get the approval. So we got the approval.
Right.
We got the approval. Yeah, you can go. You can do whatever you want. The United States has the back of Netanyahu. But the things, I mean, you have to hand it to Netanyahu. He's the ultimate villain, but he stays in power. It's very difficult in an unstable government situation like in Europe. It's very difficult to get rid of him. When he needs a coalition and get people, he can keep those people there, even when they're upset and they complain in the public. They don't leave the government. The government rarely will collapse. He is extraordinary at staying there, and that's what everyone's saying. Oh, he has to stay there and keep the war going, because not, he's going. He's going to prison.
Right.
He's going to be tried, and he's going to be found guilty of corruption and a lot of other things we don't know about, the submarine sales and all kinds of things. So, guys, what we want to tell you is that Israeli society is collapsing. Okay. And the reason this is important, we're talking about these details. So we want to take a big picture, and then we want to break down the details. So we're breaking down some of the details. This is what's happening. But guys, Jerusalem is going to be surrounded with armies. However that looks, you could say it's happening already. Okay. This is when the Lord Jesus is coming in the clouds. This is when he's coming. It says in Zechariah 14, in the day of the battle is the day his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives.
Amen.
So as we do all this stuff, we're not just, it's not World War II. It's not the 80s. We're in the time of Christ's return, guys. This is it. This is it. And the reason we're talking about these things is because he is coming. The prophecy is coming to pass. It is happening, and it's happening very, very soon.
Very soon. I keep saying that on every episode. Time is very short.
We're right here. And that's the reason we're doing this, guys. The reason we're doing this, we're providing all this information, is to say he is coming. And so that being said, okay, he's coming around these circumstances of Armageddon. That's why we talk about this, but we don't know to what extent it's going to go. Now, I think it was last week, I was listening to some Arabic news, something, and they said something that got my attention. They said they're very good with history. They do things in history very well. And the guy said, and well, it's like, the Russians lost 27 million people in World War II. I was like, nah, man, it's not that much. Now, I didn't know. I didn't know. I was like, well, let me look this up. And yeah, I mean, these are more conservative estimates. I look at it, and you could just Google. I'm just looking at, Wikipedia and stuff. Right? And I'm just like, they're saying, yeah, 24 million Russians. I was like, wow, that is just, guys, this is the 1940. The global population is 2.3 billion people. So I get to looking at this. I'm like, that is extraordinary.
Yeah, the
Um,
Russians probably paid the highest price of all the allies in that war. That's for sure.
they did.
Hmm.
Next one was China.
Yeah.
You guys could look it up. You can see statistic on it. It's rough. There's millions of people just unaccounted for. We don't even know. It's just rough numbers, guys. But they said in this kind of unofficial rough numbers, 24 million. And in this particular estimate, they said that the whole war, the total was 75 million people.
Right.